I'd like to call to order this meeting, this February meeting of the Monroe County Public Library Board of Trustees. And for starters, we're going to start by introducing our newest member of the board, Nichelle Whitney Wash, and we welcome her. She's representing the County Council, and we're so glad to have her joining us. As we begin, we'll go around and introduce ourselves, and if you care to, share a book that you are reading. And so, Kathy, why don't we start with you?
And I'm still reading The Personal Librarian.
Jamie Burkhart, and I'm reading True Grit.
Nichelle Whitney Wash, and I'm reading Will by Will Smith.
Chris Harrison, and honestly, I just picked up a book tonight because I was kind of in the middle of books.
I'm Marilyn Wood, and I'm still reading the Jill Bolte Taylor Whole Brain Living.
I'm Kari Essery, and I had to bring my book because the title's too long. So I'm reading How the Word is Past, A Reckoning with the History of Slavery Across America.
Hi, I'm Fred Reisinger, and I wrote down the book that I am reading, but I don't have it with me. But it is a book by the guy that's on television a lot. I'll just have to tell you about it next time.
Okay.
It's his biography.
The first item on the agenda are the consent agenda items, and those include the minutes of the January 19th board meeting, the minutes of the January 19th Board of Finance meeting, the minutes of the February 9th executive session, the monthly financial report, the monthly bills for payment, the personnel reports, and the 2022 board meeting calendar. Do I have a motion to approve these consent agenda items?
So moved.
Okay. Are there any questions or items for discussion or changes to the consent agenda items? Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda items signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next, we're going to turn to Marilyn for the monthly director's report.
I'm happy to answer any questions specific to the report, but I thought I would fill you in on a few things that in terms of just the level of services that we're offering now. I get questions with some frequency, particularly from our staff who are trying to put in perspective what our service levels are as they compare to pre-pandemic times, because we've been in this for a couple of years now, and so this begins to feel like the norm. And so they wanted to check themselves and see if that's where we were. So at the meeting next month, in March, we will actually go over the 2021 annual report, which is submitted to the state library. So we'll see all of the things as it compares to 2021. But I wanted to tell you a few numbers, not so much in terms of quality of services, perhaps more just in quantity of services, that compared to 2020, January 2020 before the pandemic began, and January 2022. So, and I think what you'll find is, as we talk about this a little bit, it's really that use has shifted. It's not so much that the numbers are down in every place, but they've shifted from one area of service to another. And so some of the things that we did in terms of making changes in the service provisions that we did have been very effective. And so we'll talk a bit about that. So the visits, this is the physical stuff, physical visits. This is where we see the greatest change. So our number of visits to the library in January of 2020 was 67,448 people. In 2022, it was 36,415 people. Our programs in 2020, we offered 84 programs. We actually offered 98 in 2022, so we've gone up in that area. We're beginning to, and in the director's report, you'll see there's several little anecdotes that people have told us how much they appreciated that programming has returned and what it's meant particularly for their children and for their teens. The attendance of our programs in 2020 was 1,782, and it was 1,498 in 2022. Here's another big one that was physically, because they weren't physically here. Our public computer usage in 2020, there were 11,883 sessions, and this year there were 5,199. Physical circulation of books, this is both circ and renewals, but in 2020, it was 141,908, and this year it was 119,282, so it's not that far off, particularly when you consider that's renewals as well. Our circulation of electronic resources was 68,457, and this year it was 85,000, so that one went up. And here's the number that I really appreciate, and this is how many different people made use of our library. So this is the unique use. And this is only measuring circulation activity, because that's the number we can count. But in 2020, it was 10,428 people, and in 2022, it was 8,721. So we're still reaching a lot of people in our community. So it's a different way that people are making use of it. I think one of the big things that we've noticed is, and certainly that we're working on, are the ways in which we can outreach to the community. So that's virtually, that's making connections with our partners, and we're reaching the community in a lot of different ways. And specifically, I think in the director's report, we speak to that on page 74. So you can see some of those ways that we've done it at Banneker Center and other places that have been really effective for us. Any questions about that? Numbers, please.
Invited the library to be represented at the kindergarten registration last night at Summit, and Amy came and set up a table, and she was able to get families library cards who didn't have one because they came with their documentation. And I just really appreciate her coming, and you talk about those partnerships, and we just hope to see you more in those partnerships with schools. I really appreciated her coming.
Excellent. Pretty soon, you've all heard about e-access cards before that we've talked about, and we're going to be reaching out to the schools again very soon to just share with them a proposal for next year.
And I'd like to just make a shout out to the display downstairs of the Coretta Scott King display downstairs. There is the artwork of many of the children's books that have won those awards, and it's kind of cool because there's, by each of the paintings, you can see a little, QVC code or whatever you call it. And then there's an interview with one of the artists. And then the picture books are right next there, so I went, oh. And then I said, oh, I know that book, and it was just really fun to
The connections.
mix and match. Yes,
Right.
it was very fun. So.
Yeah. And the exhibit will be here until mid-March.
Great.
I'm really interested in the partnership that Josh Wolf and Lisa Champelli are making with the National Science Foundation about exploring ways for students to become knowledge producers instead of just consumers. I think that's going to be an exciting, thinking about all the STEM activities and things, the way that we're trying to prepare our students for jobs in the future, that I think that's going to be an interesting.
And we can have
Focus.
Josh and Lisa talk to us more about that in the future.
Yeah.
And the second thing that I wanted to just publicly announce tonight is my retirement. So after 10 years here at the library, I've had the pleasure and the privilege to be here for 10 years. I am planning to retire this spring in May. Thank you for all of the support and advocacy that you have provided over the years. It's been fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Retirement is good.
We are very grateful for your 10 years of service to the library and for your years as leader.
My pleasure.
As director.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next item on our agenda is old business, which is an update on the Southwest Branch. And that will be given by Greer Carson.
See if I can't trip over some cables. So there's a lot of activity on the site, much of which you can see via our recently installed site camera. As a reminder, this camera is more or less a live feed that can be accessed by our website under the Southwest Branch page. And by the time of our planned opening in early 2023, we'll have a time-lapse video of construction from start to finish using the photographs from this camera. So if you drive up to the site, you'll see a giant wooden post that looks like it's not supposed to be there, and that's where the camera's installed. So over the past several weeks, we've received delivery of wall and column reinforcing and concrete storm structures and saw the start of rebar installation and concrete placement for the foundation. And over the next few weeks, we'll see the delivery of steel embeds and column reinforcing for walls, and the placement of the concrete elevator pit slab and its walls, and the completion of foundation excavation and installation, basically the stuff nobody cares about unless it's done properly or not done properly. So we're very excited about that. We're also excited about drafting an RFP for our opening day collection service, which we'll present for your review in March, and we're gathering details for our automatic materials handler. Excavation for the building's foundation has proven to be a challenge, and though this isn't a challenge that's entirely uncommon in Monroe County, it's one we're going to have to come to terms with. You cast your minds back about a year ago when Alt and Witzig Engineering submitted the subsurface investigation report. That report showed where and how certain test borings in the ground were strategically drilled around the site to depict subsurface conditions, and in large part this was to anticipate the amount of bedrock we were likely to encounter once we started excavation. This past month, we learned that there was a good deal more bedrock around our foundation perimeter than we anticipated. The associated costs are not insignificant and will require a change order proposal. But before we bring this to you, we want to meet with Alt and Witzig again to review the original report and to better understand how the test borings did and did not predict the actual amount of and location of the subsurface bedrock. So we expect to have this information and the change order proposal for our discussion at the March board meeting. So, as always, happy to answer any questions about the progress of construction at Southwest.
Opportunity to look at the camera. That is really going to be fantastic to have that footage.
It's fun to look and see each day what they're doing and what's getting delivered. And, yeah.
Yeah, whatever challenges we face between now and opening, that time-lapse video will help us forget all of those things.
Thank you, Greer. Okay. Moving on, our next item is new business, and the first item on that part of the agenda is the election of officers for the Board of Trustees for 2022. Do we have a motion to approve a slate of officers for Board of Trustees officers?
I'd like to present forth the draft 2022 slate of officers. President Christine Harrison, Vice President Jamie Burkhart, Secretary Carrie Essery, and Treasurer David Ferguson.
Are there any other discussions or amendments to the slate of officers?
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, seeing none, do we have we're going to call it a vote for the slate of officers as presented by Kathy Lozier. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Okay. And next, we have an update on the personnel policy from Kyle Wickemeyer Hardy. Do we have a motion to approve the personnel policy 4.09-.3,
Personnel Policy 4.09.3.
which is a continuation of health insurance coverage? Do we have a motion to approve it? In a second, thank you.
So this is really a housekeeping item. There's no major change, other than correcting what we're already doing, which means anybody that meets the requirements for continuation of health coverage for retirement, early retirement, gets a monthly contribution for health insurance of $416.67. And that hasn't changed since I've been here. So we just wanted to mark out the part that it's looked at every year. We don't do that. Any questions?
Welcome to the Monroe County Public Library. We're so glad you're here. We'd like to thank you for observing our mask requirements and for keeping your face fully covered for the duration of your visit. Thanks also for maintaining at least 6 feet between yourself and anyone else. Let's keep each other safe and healthy here at FCPL. And we hope to see you again soon.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So I'm new to this, so I just want to ask for an FYI for me. The contribution that's being made, do staff generally feel good about that? They feel like it's what they should receive?
Yes, it's really kept up with what they normally would pay, so it's a nice reduction from what they have to pay,
Okay.
depending on which plan they take. It can
Okay.
be as small as, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, a couple of $100 a month to maybe $300 or $400.
Okay, thank you.
So this, and just as a reminder, this is for retiree coverage only. This is not coverage of our current staff.
Right. And for early retirees only. It stops at age 65.
Are there any other questions for Kyle? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the changes to the continuation of health insurance coverage personnel policy signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Kyle. Okay, and finally, do we have a motion to approve the resolution to establish a depreciation policy of capital assets? Okay, and Gary Lettler will explain.
So this is a relatively long resolution, so I won't read the whole thing. But it's a resolution to establish a capital asset depreciation method. The State Board of Accounts has changed the rules on reporting capital assets. So in order to comply with those changes, we'll start reporting depreciation on MCPL capital assets. This resolution will formalize a reporting change that MCPL had to make in 2019 when the county and some of the larger county government component units had to start reporting depreciation. The library will report depreciation for 2021 on the Gateway Annual Report for the first time when we submit it this spring. Depreciation is a way to recognize the cost of an asset over the course of its useful life. In the past, most libraries have had the option to record fixed assets on the annual report or not. So State Board of Accounts has been taking steps over the past several years to require all government units to report fixed assets. Capital assets are usually in the category of buildings, equipment, and land. And the longer the useful life, the longer the time frame is to write off the cost of the asset. So at this point, I'll open it up for questions about this resolution. And yes.
I mean, the library has a vast amount of assets. Have you had to hire another person just to keep track of all this? Or is there a formula or?
Well,
Like,
MCPL has been keeping track of fixed assets since about 2008
okay,
on the Banyan accounting system. So as we buy computers and
okay,
equipment and so on, we've been tracking it. But we have not in the past done any depreciation
Yeah.
reporting. And then in 2019, we passed a resolution to set the threshold for capital assets at $5,000. So what that really meant was that as we purchase assets that are over $5,000, we have an official depreciation schedule that they go on, and it goes to the county and so on. And when we purchase like computers and so on that are less than $5,000, we continue to set those up in the fixed asset system so we can track them, but we don't depreciate them, we don't report them on the official capital asset statement. So I guess an answer to your question, is it a huge amount of work, additional work? I would say no. In my previous jobs, I've done a lot of tracking assets and depreciation, and so it's not difficult.
And I'll add a couple of things to that. One of the reasons why we do those somewhat frequent resolutions when we get rid of surplus material is to keep these things in line so that our assets really reflect what comes and what goes. And one difference that this policy makes on that $5,000 mark, or somewhat different, I don't know how to describe it, is that our collection of books is included, but it's not included on a book-by-book basis. It's included on a this is what you started with, this is how much you added, and this is how much you deleted over the course of the year.
So the new parameters that are being set down by the State Board of Accounts, does that add any extra, like, for example, limitations on you can't do the $5,000 policy, or it's just still your choice to set those parameters here?
It did not change the $5,000 policy. That's still in place. And so for reporting purposes, for as far as the state's concerned, we do make that cutoff, and over 5,000 we included on the official schedule.
Do you have any other questions for Gary? Okay, thank you. So all those in favor of approving the resolution to establish a depreciation method for the capital assets signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next, we're up to our update, but
I don't think that Mandy was going to give an update on communications and marketing, but unfortunately she had a doctor's appointment that has interfered with her. But what we do have is some collateral that is created by communications and marketing that we want to share. This one is at the end of each year. They do a fantastic, this one we call it the 2021 accomplishments. So each year we do an accomplishments sheet to give you an idea of what has happened at the library and just a highlight of some of the activities. Now, I actually use this to send to not only you, but we have it for our partners. I also send it to places like the county council and others that are stakeholders or people who want to know how we're providing services to the community. So this service is a really good way of doing that. And then there's just a card that we've sent out to everyone earlier in the year to talk about the library and just to promote use of the library. So I'll send that one that way, and I'll send this one this way. I'm sorry? Yeah, they do. They make use of that for their annual meetings in particular, too. Mm-hmm. But if you had queued up any questions for Mandy, I'll be happy to take those back to her, and we'll bring her at another time.
Got this in the mail, and I just thought it was wonderful. And the online communications, like the Facebook and Twitter, the things that go out are just savvy.
They are. They do a fantastic job. And I think one of those things that we, as we were talking about, the way that we have shifted in providing both services and ways that we communicate with people, it was driven a lot by communications and marketing. We are really fortunate to have the talented people in that department.
Any other questions or comments regarding the update on communications and marketing? Okay. We have now reached the point in our agenda that we are open for public comment. Do we have any members of the public that would like to come forward and address the board? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, nay? The ayes have it. We are adjourned.